be that we agree that we don't pay any price. This is, of course, not in the market system promoted as the WEF over the decades, because the market will repair the problem. But I don't think that this is going to work right now. So we have to be, if this is a change in times, then we have to change the rules as well. So I think there must be more creativity, more flexibility to think the unthinkable and to come to solutions over short term, that we don't give all the money to Putin and spoil the markets and come to disastrous effects in other countries. We see what's happening. You're right, Mr. Puri. If we have a global recession, or if we have a food crisis because the prices for gas are too high and we don't have enough fertilizers in the world, so what's going to happen there? So we have to fix this, and we have to do it with a new form of leadership, not to say we've never done it before in history. This is not an answer. We have to find new solutions, and we have to find them fast. And maybe this WEF can be part of the solution as well. If we have a mood to move forward and not to shy back.
I agree. It would be instructive to have this kind of a polling done in some other parts of the world. There, the cost of energy would come right up. It would take the whole band there, and then other things will follow. And that would, in a sense, also reinforce and accelerate the pace of transition. It's one. But just a little bit of sales pitch on my side. We have the lowest solar costs in the world, abundant sunshine. We are going to be the critical drivers of demand. So come to India and participate in our energy transition programs.
Thank you for the invitation. Catherine, I'll just ask the panelists to keep responses brief if they can, because I want to get more people in from the audience. But there was a question for you. And
I think there was a question around methane and I guess the control of methane leaks. So we're not producing natural gas at NG, but we operate infrastructure. So here it's all around operational excellence. And then in terms of buying gas from our suppliers, we actually benchmark the CO2 emissions from the various suppliers. And we try, and favor, obviously, the low-carbon suppliers. So the Norwegian, for example, have the lowest CO2 emitting methane from all. And in terms of some of our providers from the US, for example, we're also engaging with them with the concept of responsible source gas, which allow them to make commitment, auditable commitments, on how they are extracting the gas, producing the gas, and transporting the gas to make sure that indeed the methane emission problem is as low as possible. And lastly, I will just mention that it's also very important that we green the gas and therefore focus on biomethane, hydrogen, green hydrogen, and derivative is going to be really the future of gas that will fix the methane problem forever. But that's a bit longer term.
Let me take a few more comments, questions, and I'll come to you, Fatih, next. I know you wanted to come in on this too. Badr Jafar.
Yes, so our company, the Crescent Group, is a diversified family business group based out of the UAE. One of our subsidiaries, Pearl Gas, is the largest gas producer in Iraq, with great potential to deliver large volumes of gas, including into Europe. That's the disclaimer. Ultimately, security of supply is underpinned by security of demand. So what I'd like to know from what I've heard today is, how do you reconcile the position that on the one hand there's this urgent requirement to replace 150 billion cubic meters per year of gas displaced or replaced from Russia, with what we were hearing from my friend Fatih, there cannot be a commitment for more than a year or two. How does one reconcile those two positions, which from a sort of producer perspective could very easily lead to even greater underinvestment, which would even complicate the issue even more and lead to even further crisis in the near future?
And let me take another comment. I think I have lights in my eyes, but I think that's Zainab Usman.
Hi, Zainab Usman from the Africa program at the Carnegie Endowment in Washington, D.C. My question is for Fatih Birol. How practical do you think your advocacy for the immediate transition away from fossil fuels is? And I ask this question with respect not just to the timeline, which has been extensively discussed here, but also in terms of the use cases of fossil fuels. Take oil and gas in particular. In your messaging, you seem to imply that oil and gas are only used for electricity generation and also transportation. But there are a lot more use cases. Fertilizers, in particular, clean cooking solutions, petrochemicals and other things like that. So for many parts of the world that are not in Europe, your message tends to be, or is perceived, I know that's not what you mean, but the way people see it is that their opportunity to industrialize via these industries will no longer be available to them. So how would you respond to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Zainab. Fatih, we'll start with you.
Okay. First, Jason, I wanted to go back to the poll, and I would, if I could, I would vote for this situation may really accelerate the clean energy transition. Why do I say this? You mentioned in the beginning, 1970s. In 1970s, the oil crisis not only ended up with the high inflation and the recession, but also innovation in the energy technologies. I give you one number. During those years, an average car needed 20 liters to go to drive 100 kilometers, 20 liters. And right after that, as a response to the oil security, the average car needed about 10 liters to drive 100 kilometers. It was a response to the crisis. And now we are lucky now, compared to 1970s, because we have readily available competitive technologies now, clean energy technologies, which were not solar or wind or electric cars. They were not there in 1970s, but we have them now with us, or hydrogen for that sake. So I am therefore more hopeful, and I think the climate commitments the countries made and companies made, if they do, at least I said 50% what they promised to do, it will accelerate. Coming to the question of the oil companies. Now, there are oil companies, and I say oil companies, we automatically think of the IOCs in or the majors in the Western world, but there are oil companies which are NOCs, national oil companies as well. When we look at them, Jason, there is a very important number, I tell you. In the last 5 years, on average, the oil and gas industry revenues was $1.5 trillion until 20, just average. They make money, $1.5 trillion. This year, this $1.5 trillion will jump to $4 trillion US dollars. We have never seen this in the history. No. $4 trillion US dollars. So what are we going to do? What are they going to do with this windfall revenues? This is a key question. There are basically three options. They invest in the traditional business. Second, they pay back to the shareholders. And third, at least some of them, they used to invest in the clean energy technology, as they said they are going to do. This can be a very good opportunity for those companies to show that they are really sincere, that the amount of this historically record windfall revenues goes, at least a part of it, to clean energy transition. Third question, are we going to need oil and gas in the future? Of course we will. Nobody said we will not. Of course we will. But if we want to keep Africa, which is the continent which has the least sins in terms of the emissions, but will have the worst effects of climate change. If we want to avoid this worst effect of climate change for Africa and the rest of the world, we have to reduce their use, especially coal, followed by oil, and followed by gas. And dear colleague, we cannot, in my view, we cannot apply the same recipe, in my view, to all the countries. I cannot look at one European country and Mozambique. I cannot compare them. If Mozambique today, 65% of the people don't have an access to electricity, and if they have a natural gas deposit nearby, to tell them don't use natural gas would be a wrong, very wrong way of doing it. But globally, there are not two ways. Either we reduce the use of fossil fuels, or we are all happy to live in a planet which is completely different than today. We have to make it, it's so simple. So they are not, it is not, I think the gray zones, this current crisis will reduce the gray zones, and IEA will also contribute to that. And we have to all be transparent what we are saying, what we are doing, and what are the implications of that. And finally, I mentioned this $4 trillion US dollars, and we are going to come up very soon. Those companies, what they said and what they do in terms of the amount of money they allocate for clean energy investment in their overall portfolio, how does it look like? We are going to publish these numbers, and we hope that in addition to those companies helping the energy security, they also help the clean energy transition, as they said they are doing.
I'm going to give each of our distinguished panelists 30 seconds for a final comment or reflection, and if they stick to 30 seconds, we will end on time, and I will not get in trouble with our organizers of the World Economic Forum. So I'm curious what could surprise us, in your view, with respect to today's energy crisis or the energy transition that maybe we haven't talked enough about in the coming year. If you have a thought about that, you can feel free to ignore that question and offer any other reflection you want in response to the conversation we've had, so you don't need to follow directions on the question, but you do on 30 seconds. Vice Chancellor, let me start with you, and then we'll just go down the room.
The best hope we have is that everything can happen faster and cheaper than we ever thought before. And this happened in the past time. You mentioned UAE. When I was there, they told me that they want to achieve a price per kilowatt hour under 1 euro cent for renewable energies. So if this is going to happen, then the rest is done by the market. And I think all estimations were wrong. We were faster and cheaper with renewables than we ever thought. And if we continue this path, then we have a fine idea of the future.
Thank you. Catherine.
Yeah, very much along the same lines. I think we'll be surprised. I think it's going to be a big success, this energy transition. We do need to get the private-public partnership, regulation, and technology pieces to all pull in the same direction. It's going to be a critical success factor.
Fatih.
Thanks, Jason. So I think my message is very clear. We have an immediate energy security crisis with high costs. I hope we all together, consumer countries, producer countries, South, North, all of us together, make the most to address this energy security challenge, which was caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, without locking in our energy infrastructure for fossil fuels in the future. We should not try to justify a new wave of long-term fossil fuel investments on the basis of what Mr. Putin did.
Thank you. Minister Puri.
All the stakeholders in the global system need to do some serious introspection and subject whatever they've been saying and doing to a reality check. We need to deal with all these crises simultaneously without allowing the solution of one crisis to exacerbate the other crisis. So you've got to navigate your way out of the high-cost situation. This is not sustainable. At the same time, you have to accelerate the green energy transition. Taken together, yes, we will come out of it. The costs will be there. There will be pain. But at the end of the day, we'll be working towards a better energy world.
Thank you. Vicky.
I would say that I'm optimistic that ultimately we'll get there. I just don't know how many more oil and gas supply crises we're going to have before we can get people to seriously look at the reality of the situation and how much the oil and gas industry can and will do in this energy transition. And yes, we are spending dollars. Again, we're going to build the largest direct air capture facility in the world in the Permian Basin. We're going to expand it around the world. We're going to prove that technology, and we've made the commitment and the dollars to do it. I think that if the rhetoric around the world, though, continues to want to kill fossil fuels, then what you said is exactly true. We will ultimately lose the opportunity to help the energy transition. And if we lose that opportunity, the transition fails.
Thank you.
Hate to end on a pessimistic note. I'm normally not pessimistic.
This was a great discussion. We heard the need for more, not less, cooperation, coordination. I think the WEF is a